Slaanesh and Tomb Kings are two of the strongest factions in Domination, but how do they fare in land battles? Well, they're both still pretty good, but they're not as good, not nearly as oppressive. Of course, Tomb King's strength in Domination comes from the fact that they have great capture weight, their skeletons do not count as expendable, unlike the vampire counts, so they can just spam cheap bodies onto the field and hold down capture points until the end of time. In land battles, it's a little bit different. They have to actually fight and kill. Slaanesh, of course, their speed is definitely beneficial in land battles, but they don't get quite the same ridiculous benefit from it as they do in Domination, where they can get two objectives and outmaneuver your opponent quite easily. In land battles, you do have to fight at some point, and Slaanesh's lack of missiles means you're going to have to fight probably sooner rather than later. But let's see what we've got today. Boojilicious going up against Golden Floof, two of the best names in the community. Sigvald here with a Chaos Sorcerer of Shadows here. So the Chaos dude, 100 armor on a horse here. Has got Soul Feeder as well, self-heal while casting. Slaanesh Soul Grinder, of course. We've got some Devoted Marauders up front. Some Forsaken of Slaanesh, which I'm a huge fan of. Devastating Flanker on 24 charge on an infantry unit can get pretty wild. And just in general, that 10% physical resistance in Strider benefit the Forsaken greatly due to their style. Got some Hellstriders out to the flank here, some Seekers in the center, more Hellstriders over on the far side for Golden Floof's Tomb Kings. We've got Ark in the black in the center, some Skeleton Archers, the Regiment Renowned, Chosen of the Gods here, plenty of Nehekara Warriors for that anti-infantry bonus DPS output. We've got Tomb Guard Halberds, Skeleton Spears, and Skeleton Warriors. So, a lot of infantry for the Tomb Kings, which will be interesting to see if their just waves of HP are able to hold out and, you know, through attrition, win against Slaanesh here. But as Slaanesh advances, beautiful pink sunlight, very interesting kind of haze effect in the background there. Absolutely beautiful, though. This frontline engagement, obviously, the Slaanesh Marauders will do quite well. The Forsaken are getting focused very heavily, though, by all the Archers and the Chosen of the Gods, so they're going to get crumped pretty hard here, although they will still fight and do a decent amount of damage to those Skeleton Spears, even though they're getting absolutely savaged. On other fronts here, we see Hellstriders, again, getting a little bit caught up there on the flanks, but that's okay. Soul Grinder charges straight through the center, of course, definitely has the mass to just chad straight through some Skeletons, and immediately threaten the Chosen of the Gods. They are going to pull back nicely and continue firing, though a little bit of Spirit Leech on the Chaos Sorcerer as he charges Arcan in combat. Soul Grinder also following up here to try and tackle the Lich Master, who is on horseback, but is hilariously sized in comparison to this Chaos Champion dude here. Oh, man. I sometimes forget exactly how ridiculously huge those Chaos dudes are now, but anyway. Chosen of the Gods just getting caught up here. The Hellstriders eventually find a gap and get to them, but the Hellstriders are also caught up on significant anti-large infantry and taking lots of damage. You can see more Hellstriders, and the Seekers here just kind of waiting in the wings, looking for a good opportunity. I mean, why overblob into like an anti-large box? Definitely understand that. The Archers are a threat, though. You got to stay out of range of those, and immediately one volley of the Skeleton Archers there is going to do some significant damage to the Seekers due to that lack there. But you see he's threatening multiple angles, pulls the Tomb Guard out of position, charges straight in to those Skeleton Archers there. So some nice Slaanesh play, trying to outmaneuver, but I was going to say, in the front line, I mean, the Slaanesh infantry will eventually win out. Devoted Marauders, I don't remember when I tested them against Nehekara Warriors. 1-to-1, I think they'll maybe slightly lose, if not trade evenly, which, considering the cost, is about spot on. So, I don't know. You could basically just leave the Devoted Marauders to fight in the front line and then just wait for opportunities with your cavalry, not press overzealously here, because Slaanesh cavalry is so squishy. But the Seekers do manage to get through, chew up a unit of Archers, basically delete them. Chosen of the Gods are also in their vicinity, so they can overrun a little bit, get some great value there. Arkan has been getting mauled, literally dies before I can say that, by the Soul Grinder. One thing, Tomb King's horses are pretty slow. They don't have anything in the 90s speed range. Even their light cavalry is, I think, in the 70s speed range, which means this speedy Slaanesh Soul Grinder, especially with its Strider, can easily keep up with them no problem. 75 speed, so he can literally just outrun. Definitely creates a little bit of a problem here. I would maybe say in this matchup, it could be advisable to go with like a Necrotect monster healing box, like a construct healing box. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. Golden Floof, if you end up watching this, I'd love to hear your 2 cents on this. But I just think, you know, Arcan showed his vulnerability here, even with a lot of infantry for protection. Ultimately, the mass of Slaanesh was enough to just push through, and there's really nothing to oppose the Soul Grinder directly here, which ends up being a pretty huge problem. It's one of those things, a lot of people will think of Slaanesh as like a wide rush faction, which they definitely can do very effectively, but the Soul Grinder is such a nice option to have. I mean, it pairs quite favorably even to something like a Shaggoth. Just in general, that Strider, So Perfect Musk, of course, having physical resistance as a demon, devastating flanker as well on that 40 charge. So it's not completely won yet for Slaanesh. In fact, balance power is even slightly in Tomb King's favor, as the Kepler Guard here are just blending through infantry. They are, of course, the wild card in this infantry fight that can beat down pretty much any Slaanesh infantry except Chosen. Definitely just whittling away at these Devoted Marauders over time, especially given they have magic attacks. Basically just counteracts the mark of Slaanesh, so definitely a very solid unit to have in this matchup. Their weakness to fire also doesn't really matter against Slaanesh right now, at least. Slaanesh doesn't have any units which deal fire damage, which seems like a little bit of an oddity to me. I mean, I would think that Slaanesh, you know, would enjoy burning things for pleasure. I don't know. It's an odd one, I know, but still. Anyway, the Soul Grinder there taking some damage as it fights on top of Tomb Guard. Wisely pulling away there, getting a couple of hits on the Chosen of the Gods. The Forsaken end up filtering in here as a result, but just the lack of support of Slaanesh, I say it could be a problem, but of course, Sigvald, absolute Chad that he is, perfect vigor, 110 armor, is going to be very tough for anything that the Tomb Kings have on the field currently to actually kill. So it could come down to a classic Sigvald grind fest at the end, just rubbing bone on bone until the end of time. I'll let you think about that one for a minute, but anyway, we'll see. A lot of these other units are starting to crumble out. The Forsaken, pretty in pink, are continuing to fight as well. Soul Grinder, not doing any attack animations, unfortunately, but is providing a nice kind of blob here for the Forsaken to fight into. A little bit of an attack there. The Forsaken looks like are going to be seen off the field, but there we go. Sigvald manages to reunify, and as long as Sigvald and the Soul Grinder can fight together, that's going to be better for Slaanesh. Get a lot of units coming back from route as well. These Devoted Marauders in a nice concave can just charge in and try and get a little bit of a surround, maybe finish off some of these tattered units. I say tattered. Tomb Guard are all healthy here. The three Tomb Guard Halberds and the Kepler Guard are all quite healthy. This Nehekara Warrior also in pretty good shape. So, Winds of Magic-wise, Slaanesh, Boojilicious, definitely going to have to rely on this Penumbral Pendulum to deal some damage in the late game. He probably still has some Winds of Magic left on the table, but just patiently waiting for good opportunities to present themselves. We'll see. Might have used it up already. But, yeah, we'll see. I mean, Tomb Guard Halberds fighting Devoted Marauder Spears here, just kind of grinding it out for the time being. Being very cool in the process. Tomb Guard, of course, decently superior in terms of stats, I would think. Let's actually compare. Yeah, 47-25. Obviously, the Devoted Marauders only 39 melee defense. Even the Spear variant's pretty low for a Spear unit. They're going to be taking hits from the Tomb Guard, which is not super efficient. But Sigvald will continue to grind. So let's fast forward through this endgame, as this will take some time. Devoted Marauders continuing to filter in here, and the leadership damage is almost enough to force some crumbling, but not quite. So instead, the undead units prove that they are essentially unbreakable here in this type of situation. Soul Grinder also can cycle charge a little bit here, but finally we see some Penumbral Pendulums activated, starting to get a couple of kills there. Nehekara Warrior is finally almost off the field, and this entire time Sigvald is just, again, bone grinding with the Kepler Guard there. Another nice Penumbral Pendulum, although Boojilicious has got to be careful not to get his caster routed here. Obviously, if he commits too hard to forcing a blob with the Tomb Guard, with the caster himself, he will just get killed. But very patiently, just waiting until Sigvald can grind through, and a lot of people might rush in their other troops to try and support Sigvald as much as possible, but for me, it almost makes sense to kind of keep these guys back just to keep on the balance of power. Of course, keep their vigor up, not commit unnecessarily, and just play it smart. I mean, the Tomb Kings didn't have any mobility to respond anyway, so why not just cycle charge efficiently, make sure you avoid any bad engagements, and just, you know, keep those units on the field, especially the caster. I mean, obviously, he can continue to deal damage at a range with his spells, but ends up working out in the end there. Arcan just dying horribly is definitely a dagger for the Tomb Kings. Hard to come back from, but at the same time, the rest of the build does perform pretty well. Nehekar Warrior is pretty good overall. The Kepler Guard, obviously regiment around Tomb Guard here. Crazy, almost 2,000 value there. Just an awesome unit in this matchup. Definitely an auto include for all of my builds. Tomb Guard Halberds also traded pretty good. They can sometimes have a hard time in this matchup, but I do like the pick in order to help support against monsters or cavalry or whatever else. Slaanesh can bring a variety of armored and unarmored large things at this point, so it is good to have the halberds to prepare. I mean, knights are not super common in this matchup, but you may occasionally see them in place of like the seekers and so forth. Yeah, skeleton infantry otherwise did okay. I mean, skeleton spears with 500 value is definitely fairly solid, but it also, you know, it's tough. When the Lord gets so little value, these other units would have had to carry quite a bit, which they just were not able to, unfortunately. Sigvald, of course, the Bane of Tomb Kings has long been footlords, tanky footlords in particular. They really just don't have great solutions to. Sigvald definitely gives them some problems. You can kill him via army losses, or like if the Kepler Guard had been able to get some active armor mitigation, which the Tomb Kings, again, don't have a ton of. But, yeah, Soul Grinder did a decent job as well, just about pays for itself. I like the pick of the Forsaken. Even if they didn't pay for themselves, they still were able to clear out some chaff and tactically help out a bit here. Same thing with all the Devoted Marauders. They do an alright job, but obviously Sigvald is the heavy carry here. So if we kind of think about Tomb Kings and their anti-infantry AP solutions. So, like I said, good footlords are a decent counter for Tomb Kings in land battles. You might think, like, you know, against Slaanesh, especially without too many missiles, something like a Kemrian War Sphinx, especially Cetra on the War Sphinx, has fairly solid stats and does have a true anti-infantry bonus. The problem is, if Sigvald's sitting in his own infantry, it's going to be really hard to get the splash attacks to hit him only reliably. So it is something to consider. Double War Sphinx, though, might not be a terrible idea in this matchup, especially if you were to go with maybe a Caster Lord. Yeah, Cetra's pretty expensive. You could maybe take Arcan or even Katep for cheapness, depending on which Lord of Magic you want. Personally, I'm a big fan of Arcan. The fact that he can summon more skeletons is always nice. But we are definitely going to hang on to this Tomb Blade of Arcan to get that summon. And then Staff and Nagash, we'll come back to this perhaps. Liber Mortis, My Will Be Done are both quite nice to have as well. And then in terms of magic, yeah, it's tricky. I mean, the armor mitigation of Soul Blight is nice. Also nice to nerf the damage output of Slaanesh a little bit, but buffs and debuffs tend not to be the best these days. It's better typically to just go with raw damage output, so Spirit Leech. And honestly, Fate of Buna, there's a chance here that you could see like a specific high value target, like, you know, Heartseekers. Again, Knights are another good one. You see like the Bringers of Beguilement, another one of these elite multi-model units that Fate of Buna is just going to deal very efficient, well, maybe not super efficient, but good, reliable damage, and you'll be able to just remove threats from the battlefield. Not the most exciting thing in the world, but definitely can benefit you greatly. And then from there, again, maybe double War Sphinx. The War Sphinx's anti-infantry, their speed makes them just generally a great unit overall. Don't have the best stats in the world, so you really do need to rely on that charge bonus, but 95 armor and a pretty good amount of HP combined with the mobility. They're cheaper than something like the Necro Sphinx, which, again, has less HP overall. So something like this is maybe what I would go for, and then you come in here and support with some Necrotechs. Necrotech's abilities, again, I tend to take a more minimalist approach these days and cut everything. Really think about what you're going to need. Of course, armor and missile resistance aren't helpful really against Slaanesh, neither of them. A little bit of extra Melee attack and armor piercing damage might help, so we'll think about that. It's only 100 points. This one here, so this is an item that I think a lot of people don't realize exists, but Blinded is probably the strongest contact effect in the game, in my opinion. I mean, it's a minus 24 melee attack, melee defense, which is just insane to have on contact. There's, you know, like Dazed is, I think, like a -5 of one specific thing. Soporific Musk also, like -5 attack defense, right? So this is just insane in comparison. And this is a constant blinded imbuement. Granted, it's only on the Necrotect himself, but can be absolutely insane given that it's just a straight nerf. So if, like, let's say you're keeping Necrotect as much as possible with the Khemrian War Sphinxes, you have him getting attacks with this so that they can fight a lot more effectively. And yeah, it's pretty good support, honestly. I would definitely recommend having it. And, you know, you could always come in here and grab a second Necrotect for the second restore. And at this point, you've got quite a bit of attrition power in these units to try and get more support from Arcan, get more summons. These two can also act as protection. If, like, a Soul Grinder tries to dive Arcan, these two, especially if the Necrotects are nearby, will beat, like, 2v1 absolutely would beat Soul Grinder. So something to think about. Anyway, a little bit of a long rambling end on this one, but I know some of you guys enjoy when I do this kind of theory crafting. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.